Again now, welcome to the conference that the Labor and Community Conference Network is putting on, our first one. And this is on the tricks of the duopoly, avoiding third parties in the electoral process. I know that's not the exact name, but I'm going to give a description of our organizing group. The Labor and Community Conference Network began with the June 28th, 2025 conference to break the two-party system. The conference was racially and politically diverse with 14 sponsoring labor and community organizations. It was organized around asserting working class political independence, building local and statewide electoral coalitions to challenge the Democrats and Republicans, and to advocate for democratic elections, and supporting and building actions to protest the genocide in Gaza, other U.S. wars, and the mass ICE raids targeting immigrant people. If you could, when you're not talking, put yourselves on mute. We will we will begin now. Any newcomers, please put your names and say hello in the chat. And we are going to start with Jonathan Martin for our presentations. And each presenter will allow time for a Q&A afterwards. And I will introduce Jonathan. Jonathan is co-author and editor of the book Empowering Progressive Third Parties in the United States, a co-founder of the group Progressive Party Builders, and a professor of sociology at Framingham State University. Take it away, Jonathan.
Thanks a lot, Don. Glad to be here. Hello, everybody. So I want to start by saying that reflecting on electoral strategy is critical in these times. It may not be so easy in this period of rising neo-fascism to stop and think about what we on the independent left are doing electorally. But we need to do it for several reasons. There's a lack of a compelling left electoral alternative to corporate dominated duopoly, and especially to the Democrats, which helped create the conditions that led to the rise of Trump and company. And over time, a truly viable progressive party or progressive parties are essential to mobilizing people against oligarchy in all of its partisan forms, whether more or less overtly extreme. We need to think carefully about what we can do differently than what we've already been doing to increase our chances of success. So reflecting on electoral strategy is vital in this period, even though on the surface it might not seem that way. So the problem that I'm going to address is arguably one of the biggest traps facing left electoral parties. And that's the theme of this panel is, traps, things that we have to avoid in order to move forward. And the thing that I'm going to focus on is called the ballot access treadmill at the state level. It seems to me that third parties or aspiring third parties often get stuck on this ballot access treadmill. So I'm going to talk about what that is and different ways of avoiding it. What is the ballot access treadmill? What it is that every 2 to 4 years, established and aspiring third parties often invest a huge amount of time, energy, and resources gaining and maintaining state ballot status. Now that can involve collecting thousands to tens of thousands of petition or registration signatures, or repeatedly running high-profile statewide candidates to get a qualifying percentage of the vote, both of which require a large investment by our organizations. And we do this for understandable reasons. We want to get ballot lines for our candidates, and we want to seem legitimate as parties. And official government recognition is one way that we think we can gain that legitimacy. As a result, commitment to this ballot access practice, the ballot access treadmill, is quite popular in our movement. When I say our movement, I mean among third parties, progressive or left third parties. It's widely accepted as necessary by longtime activists and leaders of established third parties, and it's often seen as a first step to pursue by builders of new parties to attract new members and future candidates. But when I say that the high investment pursuit of state party ballot status can be a treadmill, I don't mean it in a positive sense, like a treadmill at the gym that makes you stronger the more you run on it. I mean a kind of treadmill like the wheel for a rat who never gets out of its cage and keeps running on it and doesn't really get anywhere. So, admittedly, many intensive campaigns for state party ballot access often do attain their immediate goals. That is, getting or keeping a state party ballot line. Yet we generally don't take it to the next level of using these hard-won ballot lines to actually gain electoral power. Our state and federal candidates who subsequently use our ballot lines rarely, if ever, win or come close to winning. And that reinforces the popular, debilitating impression that we can't win and we aren't even serious about it. More importantly, the money, time, and energy that we often pour into the pursuit of state ballot access diverts us from putting that into more viable campaigns at the local level, where it's much easier to be competitive and even win. And it may be that many of our local races could do better, or we could win more of them if we use more of those resources that we're using on the ballot access treadmill. But we don't. Yet I think we could. In any case, as a result, we may be missing the opportunity to build a larger critical mass of local victories that could become an inspiring springboard, a springboard to building a larger base of public support and recruiting and running stronger candidates. Once we gain state party ballot access, though, we might feel like it's a feather in our cap and it's hard to give it up, even if its practical political value is dubious. We can get addicted to it. So I'm claiming here that there are alternatives to the ballot access treadmill. As third parties or third parties to be, what are the ways that we can avoid this ballot access treadmill? Focus initially on municipal races, where state party ballot access normally is not needed and it's easier to win. I'll repeat, at the municipal level, state party ballot status is normally not needed. Many of us may not realize that. And then once you should wait to get ballot qualified statewide until you've been successful enough at the local level to invest fruitfully in seeking state ballot qualification. In other words, wait until you've recruited a competitive candidate or wait to recruit a competitive candidate at higher levels after you've successfully run candidates at lower levels, and those people can become your candidates at higher levels or can inspire other people who can be strong candidates to run at those higher levels and can be competitive. And it's important to stress that in most municipalities, elections are technically nonpartisan, meaning you don't run on a ballot line, just on your name as a candidate. Now, in my small city of Melrose, Massachusetts, it's like that, and so are most other localities in Massachusetts. And in some states like Texas, all local races are nonpartisan. But in any case, most municipal races around the country, not all of them, but most of them, are technically nonpartisan. But in a nonpartisan municipality, candidates can still closely associate in public with a party-like organization. For example, Shama Swan. She was a city councilor for a decade and a half. She ran in a nonpartisan race, but she closely associated with the group, the party-like group, Socialist Alternative. Bernie Sanders, when he was an independent socialist mayor, he ran nonpartisan, but he identified with what was called the Progressive Coalition, which later became the Progressive Party. And Gail McLaughlin, who was the mayor of Richmond, California in the Bay Area, she ran in a nonpartisan race and won for mayor, but she was closely associated with the Green Party and then with a party-like group called the Richmond Progressive Alliance. So you don't need to have a party label in order to run in a municipal race, in a nonpartisan municipal race, but still be closely associated with a party and advance the fortunes of that party. Now, a minority of municipalities do have partisan races where a candidate can run with a label on the ballot. I'm thinking of New York City, Philadelphia, Indiana, Baltimore, DC, Louisville, and Charlotte, North Carolina. But in many of these cases, you can either form your own local party or you can choose your own label to run on, called a political designation, without a lot of effort. So again, you still don't need that state ballot access. In these cases, you can create your own party or own party label. Those are the rules in many of those places. Or if for some reason you can't run with a party or a personal label in a partisan municipality, you can still choose to run as an independent and again closely associate with a party-like group. So in some, it's very widely possible to run as an unofficial or official municipal third-party candidate without getting on the state ballot access treadmill. Second, a way of avoiding the ballot access treadmill for state-level candidates, there are a few ways actually that you can run with a third party without a state party ballot line in several states: Alabama, Illinois, Missouri, New York, Tennessee. You can easily form a party in a state district, like a state rep district, and permanently get that ballot line there. And by minimal effort, I mean in Illinois, just filling out some nomination papers for this district party. In Alabama and New York, just having a candidate who chooses a party label to get on the ballot in the district. That's all. You just need a candidate, and then you can establish a political designation. A district political party. And in Missouri and Tennessee, usually collecting just a couple of hundred signatures for average sized districts is enough to get that district party. Or you can use what I've been calling a political designation at the state level, and that's allowed in nearly half of states. Non-party state candidates can choose their own label to run. For example, it could be socialist, it could be progressive, it could be alternative, it could be green, it could be polka dot, it doesn't matter. And it usually requires no signatures and occasionally very few signatures to get that designation. The most in the country that I'm aware of to get a political designation as a candidate is 50 signatures right here in Massachusetts. So it's not that hard when it's allowed to get it. And you do not need state ballot access. And in states where it's not possible to do either of the things I just mentioned, you can run with no label as an independent, but again, still strongly connect yourself to a party in your literature, on the web, in your public statements. Now, a third way to avoid the ballot access treadmill is to seek statewide ballot status in states where it is easier. So I'm not saying never seek statewide ballot status, but think about places where it's easier to do if you're going to do it. Like in several states, you only need proof of an organization or hundreds of signatures rather than thousands, or no more than 1,000 registered party voters to form a party. Missouri, Vermont, Hawaii, Florida, Colorado, Delaware, Louisiana are all places where you can do this. You can easily, it is a lot easier to get statewide party status. There are other states that are harder, but there are some that are easier. And in a couple of states, you can run low-profile statewide candidates like auditor or treasurer to gain ballot access. You don't have to run a governor or secretary of state or president. It's only a couple of states, Colorado and Massachusetts, where you can do that. But you don't have to invest as much as you do in those high-profile races. And voters are more willing to vote for you without knowing that much about you because it's a low-stakes race. So here in Massachusetts, we can get 3 to 8% with a treasurer or auditor third-party candidate. I'm thinking about the Green Party. Routinely without them having to invest a huge amount in the race, and that can gain ballot status. So in roughly half of states, there are moderate to lower investment ways to maintain ballot status once you've gained it through a higher investment effort. In some of those cases, it might be worth it to put in the initial big ballot access effort so you can keep it with much less effort later. It depends on the rules. So my message is not to ever seek state party ballot qualification, but rather to do it selectively, where and when you can do it more easily or when the investment is worth the likely electoral payoff. Make the pursuit of state ballot qualification a useful tool when it really makes sense rather than a trap that bogs you down into doing the same things over and over again and not progressing politically. All right, I see I've got to wrap up, so I'm going to do that. To sum up what I've said and conclude, it's important to avoid getting stuck on a state ballot access treadmill. It distracts us from the bottom-up efforts that can enable our parties to become more electorally successful and appealing. Although many of us may assume that getting and staying on this ballot access treadmill is necessary, there are a number of less costly and more promising methods for building our parties, and I've gone through a number of them. So I encourage you to learn about what specific ballot access alternatives are available in your own state by using 4 resources that I'll share in the chat right now. So I'm going to copy and paste this. I hope that it works. And it includes 3 pages from the Ballotpedia site. I highly recommend those. One is ballot access requirements for political parties. Another one is political party designations. I mentioned that. You'll see the roughly 22 states where it's possible to run as a candidate on a political party designation without party ballot qualification. Ballot access for major and minor party candidates. So what does it take to get on the ballot? You should familiarize yourself with all of these if you haven't already. And finally, your Secretary of State website or your state election board website, whichever one describes the rules needed to run as a party or a candidate. So I strongly encourage you to review that information. That's where I get my information. And I guess that'll do it. I look forward to the discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I should say that the next speaker might go a little longer, but Jonathan said he wanted 15 minutes, so I was letting him know for the 15 minutes. The next one might go 20 minutes. Any case, now John Harris will come on board and help with the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. You could use, there's the reaction button, the react button. It's got a little heart. You may see that. And you could click on that, raise hand, lower hand, or you could raise it to the camera and maybe we'll see that. Or you could speak out if we miss you. And John Harris, are you available to help with that?
I certainly am. I'm here. And please, any comments, questions you have, let's go ahead with it. I'm looking for hands. I'm even looking in the chat as well. So
Now, I
let's
should
go.
say if there are no questions, I have some objections to my argument that I think people might raise that I'm glad to respond to, but I'd rather take your questions.
Okay, anyone would like to speak or question? Okay, we have Elizabeth there, and that's another announcement I'd like to make. And then Maureen, I threw out my my Zoom access link to a lot of people, and some of them just went ahead and used it because it was easier to navigate. I did this right before the meeting, so there's you know, at least 2 or 3 John Harrises in our discussion. So the first person is Elizabeth.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I enjoyed your talk. I think you're absolutely correct. What I want to know about is that there are a lot of small groups, progressive groups. Is there some way, I've been on the left for many years, and always I have found out that the left eats their own. They're constantly going after each other. Is there some way that we can get together and be an example, a progressive movement or whatever you want to call it, but somewhere where we can all be on the same page and not go after each other on what, some minor point or something. Anyway, I'd like to have your opinion on that. Thank you.
Well, I think this group is the first step in that direction. That's our intention here, is to get different entities on the independent left to try to work together. And, you know, one step can lead to another. I hope we have more events. You know, sometimes groups sort of fighting with each other can be a substitute for focusing on how to be effective. And it comes out of powerlessness. So the more we focus on how we can be effective and not what we can do to compete with other groups, whether that means working together or working alone, I think the better off we'll be, and the more we'll be able to work together over time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next in line here is Maureen. Go ahead.
Hey, John, it's great
Hi,
to see you.
Maureen. Yeah, good to see you.
And it's good to see you too, Jonathan. I don't know how many people saw that there was a post in the GPUS discuss list about an article that Emmanuel Pastriak wrote about how this is a good time for the Green Party to, I don't know, to strive ahead, to, you know, this is a great opportunity since we're losing so much from the duopoly. And I myself wrote back like, yeah, but we got to play by their game and we got to play by their rules and we got to have a lot of money and press and all that crap. So could you speak, Jonathan, to how this could be a good opportunity? I know you didn't see that article, but just like it, just imagining that this might be a good opportunity for any third party. Over.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw a poll a couple or a few months ago saying that half of the American public, and this is like a mainstream poll, wants to participate in a third party, roughly half. I think it was 49%. And that's the first time I've seen a result like that. Usually it's been, I support a third major party as an alternative to the two parties who do such a poor job that we need something like that. But this is the first time that people said they'd be willing to participate. So now, of course, you have to give people a reason to participate. And I think they won't participate unless they feel like you're serious and you can be effective. So I do feel like, you know, there's more and more frustration. There's frustration with the Republicans and what they're doing with the Democrats and kind of their sort of token efforts and oftentimes complicity with the Republicans. And it's becoming clear, you know, the dissatisfaction with both parties is not only greater, but more intense than it's ever been. So, yeah, I think that we do have an opportunity there, but I don't want to sound like a broken record. But I think people are not so likely to participate in something unless they think it can make a difference. So we need to be really clear about that. How can we portray ourselves and focus ourselves in ways that will enable us to make more of a difference, not keep doing the same things, as I was suggesting here, that alienate people or make them feel like we're not serious, but focus on those things that do cause them to take us more seriously.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, who do we have next?
Charlene, I'm only on the phone, so.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
Hi, Jonathan. This is Charlene, who, you know, we work together on CDLC and all that.
Yes, good to talk to
This
you.
is great. Yeah, great to hear you. I'm definitely thinking about what you said and some things I learned from some of my politically engaged people who are on different pieces of the Democratic Party. And one of the things I've heard is it's pretty hard even for the duopoly parties to recruit somebody to run for office. And, you know, I persist in trying to do this wherever possible, although I know, you know, it's better for people who can actually get out and buttonhole people face to face, one-on-one. Yeah, the worse and the more the billionaire junta take over the electoral process, the harder it is to find anyone who will take that on. Do you have any thoughts about just recruiting somebody to run, like not necessarily statewide, although that would be good, I feel, in some ways for sure, but even district office? Over.
Well, I think Sabrina is going to talk a lot about that. So I'm looking forward to her presentation on ways of recruiting people, including those who uh, one normally thinks might be, you know, less
Right.
likely to run. But how do you recruit people in these times? Again, I think it's important to show that you have a decent base of support, because that's what a candidate is looking for. They want to feel like, if you don't have a lot of money, and most of us don't, that you have potentially an army of people out there who are going to back them up when they get out on the street and they're going door to door. So I think that, forming an organization and trying to recruit a nice core of committed people is a great way to show someone who might think about running but is reluctant that you've got their back and they're going to have the support they need to run a decent race.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have anyone else? You can raise your hand or use the chat or just speak out. Well, I guess I'm not seeing anyone right now. What do you think, Don?
All right. Well, we can move forward then. Thanks, John.
Thanks,
You're
everybody.
welcome.
Thank you, Jonathan. Oh, wait, Jesse Kuhlman's got a question.
Yeah,
Human.
hi. I'm curious if you've put this together. You have these resources on ballot access. If you put together a table of the different states and what the requirements are for each state, where it might be an organized thing that could be posted, and I think to get to the root of that question is I'm interested what the low hanging fruit is. Um, where where's the easiest ballot access in the country? Who has the most difficult ballot access? How do they make it difficult? Um, or is it just signature requirements, or what other issues that they employ to essentially make ballot access really difficult? What I've found is that the two cartel parties engineer the rules so that minor parties can't get ballot access. And of course, they use first past the post counting
Right.
to basically eliminate minor parties. So there are two issues that should be addressed. One is how do we make ballot access easier for minor parties, with signature requirements and such, and identifying what the issues are so that we know what we're up against. Is
Yeah.
that too messy a question?
No, they're just different parts of it. I do have tables. I didn't bring them to this presentation or expect to share them with people so much because they're quite dense. Um, but yeah, and I do have a sense of which states are more difficult. I mean, I consider when it comes to ballot access, about half of states to be somewhat easier, maybe another 25% to be moderately difficult, and 25% to be super difficult. But I would have to explain and go into more of the details, which we don't have time to do here, unfortunately. But I hope to publish that at some point soon so that other people can use it. The rules do change from time to time, and that's one thing. I did this research a couple of years ago, but they don't change that much. Let's see, there was something else you asked, but changing the ballot access rules. I think electoral reform is really important, and Howie later is going to speak about some, deep electoral reforms that we need. So my advice about how to work within the system to exploit it as best we can and not get distracted and get on this ballot access treadmill, that doesn't preclude trying to change the rules, not only of ballot access, but also the voting systems in ways that will make it easier for third parties to compete. So I'm definitely a big supporter of that and look forward to hearing Howie's presentation about what he recommends.
Also, I might suggest that you introduce Duverger's law to people to mention that and explain what Duverger's law is and how it hurts, basically eliminates minor parties from participating.
Yeah, well, maybe Howie will talk about that since he's going to discuss the electoral structure. So I don't want to take away from what he's going to say, but I think you're making a good point. And there's also an argument to be made that that so-called law is not necessarily as powerful as people sometimes assume that it is. But maybe Howie will have something to say about that, and I look forward to hearing his presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. We're going to move on, and if there's time at the end, we can do some more of this.
One thing
There's
I
always the
wanted to
email.
mention, Don, is that folks who are not on the Labor Community Conference email list, I would encourage you to put your emails in the chat so that we can continue some of these discussions and get in touch with you as we have future webinars. So certainly, if you're not on that listservs, Labor Community Conference, please put your email in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So our next speaker, Sabrina Peña Young, will focus on how groups like ours can effectively recruit less privileged but still viable candidates. And I'll let her speak to that. There'll be a little more wider topic than that, but that's general. And I'm going to introduce Sabrina, an award-winning composer and TEDx speaker, began in arts education for houseless South Florida children. Young expanded to abolition, refugee rights, and national electoral politics. She served as communications director and congressional candidate recruitment director, where she designed a database to analyze deep dives on 300 plus congressional candidates, earning the moniker the most powerful person in the room and the stalker. Now disabled by long COVID, Young uses her talents for chaotic good, supporting leftist organizations and the movement while undermining fascists. Welcome, Sabrina.
Hi. So I am happy to see everybody. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share. So let me see if I can set it up over here. Of course, now the share option has disappeared on my thing again. Do I have the share option right now to share my screen?
I think you have to be a co-host.
Okay, yeah, because I needed to share my screen for the, remember we tested it before? I think it can give me permission to. Oh, wait, there we go. There's share screen. Let me see if I can do it now. Okay, there we go. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so you want to run for office. So I wanted to go ahead and kind of tag on to what Jonathan just spoke about. He really stressed the importance of trying to start at the very bottom, right? Local, municipal offices for a variety of reasons, right? He gave many reasons why. So much of my experience was in national politics and electoral politics before the pandemic specifically, and definitely before I got long COVID. So I thought it'd be good to kind of put together kind of a quick little workshop, a little toolkit per se of some of the ways that you can run for office yourself, or if you want to use this to recruit somebody you know, it's not impossible. You just got to be smart about it. So I started with India Walton here because I think people don't realize how hard the corporate Democrats really work to destroy potential progressive candidates. India ran as a socialist and was affiliated with the DSA and the left. She won her primary for Buffalo mayor, rightly so. And the mayor that was on the Democratic mayor, Mayor Brown, instead of stepping down and allowing her to run, which she probably would have won because it's a majority Democratic area, he decided to recruit Republicans and more conservative Democrats, scare them that a socialist was going to take over Buffalo, and there was going to be crime. And anyway, needless to say, what ended up happening was at the same time, AOC and the DNC decided that she was a darling. And at the same time, at the end of the day, what ended up happening was Byron Brown ran as a write-in candidate, got all these people to vote for him, and she ended up not being able to run for, she didn't end up getting the mayor race. Now, traditionally, he should have stepped down, and then she would have run, and then she probably would have won, because the Republican doesn't really have much base here. But that's kind of an example of a local Democratic Party deciding that, no, they don't want a socialist, and doing everything they can, even working with Republicans, to try to get somebody to lose. So I'm going to go to the next slide if it lets me. There you go. Okay. So at the national level, everybody has talked about John Fetterman. Oh my goodness. People are like, oh, since he got a concussion, he's changed. Or they'll say all kinds of weird things about why he's voting conservative. The DNC knew he was conservative from day one. When he was running for senator in Pennsylvania, the group that I was with, the organization I was with, we interviewed Malcolm Kenyatta, and I did a deep dive on Fetterman. The story that came out, as you can see, this particular story came out in 2025, but it came out a couple years later, about him almost shooting a black jogger that happened to be by his house with a rifle or whatever, shotgun, was old news. In fact, Malcolm Kenyatta was running against him. Malcolm Kenyatta is a young progressive. He's black, he's gay, he's kind of not whatever Fetterman was that the DNC wanted. The DNC went head over heels to make sure Fetterman was the one that won and was the one running for them. But why? Because even though he was very unpopular, even with his own people, and he was a mayor of a town, and they thought he was white savior complex 101, they did not want Malcolm Kenyatta. Now, years later, of course, we have Fetterman busy backstabbing everybody left and right, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, what happened? He was always this way. The man tried to shoot a black jogger walking by because he was scared. And while there was all these different versions of the story, the version I saw was that he got scared after watching TV and decided to run out with a gun, saw a guy run by, tackled him, called the cops, and according to the guy that was knocked down, he also pointed the gun to his head. Now this version of the story is a little nicer, but all to say that was not a progressive. Yet the DNC knew this and they still ran him. So when he started to go ahead and make all these other choices, I was like, yeah, he's not a progressive. He's not a leftist. He's not even a Democrat, really. He was a white guy that liked guns and looked tough, and they thought he was better than Malcolm Kenyatta. Ironically, Malcolm Kenyatta now is the vice chair of the DNC, replacing David Hogg, and there's kind of a infighting going on there, which is really interesting. Anyway, the reason I told you these two stories is because, whoops, that's not the right direction, is because you are against a corporate machine. Oh, look, it's our two favorite people. Not. Anyway, you're against a corporate machine. This is whether it's, statewide, national, local. The corporate parties don't want progressives. They don't want leftists. They definitely don't want black and brown people. They don't want poor people. There's a lot of groups that they just won't even look at. At the national level, it's really hard to go ahead and get a spot. And as Jonathan mentioned, state ballot is difficult too. So what can we do? Well, we can run for local office, one office at a time. Number one, these are the three things that I wanted to make sure you knew. Number one, don't ask for permission. You can do it, whatever. You don't have to get anybody's permission to run for office. Like you could do it like today and get ready for next year, okay? You need to get involved with your community. And time is on your side. What does that mean? That means even if you don't have all the A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs you need, if you start now and give yourself 12 months, 24 months to run this thing, you actually have a chance, especially locally, that doesn't have as much competition. Okay, we need more diverse candidates, obviously, teachers, activists, healthcare workers, young families and parents. We need people that are regular people, not people that have a net worth of like $5 billion or whatever, $5 million or whatever. We need to have everyday people because we care, because it affects us. And definitely don't need people that live outside your city, outside your state, running inside of your district. I mean, that's ridiculous. So usually when you look for a candidate, you want name recognition, you want a big war chest, you want connections and communication. By communication, I added that one because these days you have to be a little savvy with social media and know how to use all that kind of thing to your advantage. I'm not going to talk as much about communication. That could be its own workshop in itself. One thing I do want to say is if you run for office or you have a candidate that you're helping, they cannot win by just posting on X, on Twitter. They will not win. I have had candidates think that they can win a congressional race by just tweeting and posting on Facebook. That's not a thing. The big thing, you have to always go in there, be in people's faces, shake hands, be in the community. That's what's important. Okay. So how do you overcome some of these obstacles? For the name recognition, get involved in your community, especially if it's locally. If you're not, I'm sure some of you are already activists, maybe you're involved in a religious community, maybe you're involved in the arts or education. Just get involved in your community. Once again, you can't be an outsider to a place of people you want to represent. You want to be of them. They should be your neighbors. These should be people that, you see on Sunday or Saturday when you go to services. For your war chest, that's a little difficult, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. You want to tap into your circle, and that goes along with connections and power mapping. And for communication, once again, it's not just social media. What works is door to door, is standing there, asking, talking to people one-on-one, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye, answering their questions, because they will remember that, and they're not going to remember your dumb tweet. And I'm sorry to say it that way, but I just had way too many people that thought that that was like the solution to everything. Let me do a TikTok. No, that's not how that works. If you do something in the community, then make a TikTok about it and share that. Or use the TikTok to have people come out, but don't use it as a substitute for actual real involvement.
Right.
Okay. So with community, there's different reasons why you want to get involved in community. Obviously, there's empowerment. You can show that you're a leader. You can demonstrate leadership. There's actions you can get involved with. Innovation. What I put here is that one of the communities in Chicago that are being attacked by ICE right now are using whistles to chase ICE out of the way, like just chase them. So together we can actually make all these changes. And there's unity. This is from the No Kings. So first, I was going to ask, so I want you to take a minute and think about how are you involved in your community? And if you want to share that in the chat, I just realized, let me see if I can see the chat here. Oh, there it is. But share that in the chat and just think of different ways that you're already involved in your immediate community. Okay, just go ahead and, if anybody wants to share there. I know for myself, there's a lot of stuff going on in our area. Right now, the food pantries are a big thing. Local areas are starting to get ready for what's happening with the food stamps, and we're collecting food items and for the food pantries, the churches, and the communities. So there's lots of different ways to get involved. So I don't know if anybody wants to share. I don't see anybody. I don't see anything in the chat, but I wonder if that's because I can't see any chat very well. There we go. Oh, there we go. There we go. Conservation, anti-war, Palestinian struggle, and self-determination. Yeah, some other, yes. Okay. So, all right, let me close that down. So if you're thinking about running for office, you need to think about what communities do you have now and what communities you might need to reach out to. For example, you want to be representative of the community you're going to represent. And why do I say that? A lot of times we have people that are not of the community. They think they're better than the community. The example is John Fetterman. I believe he was a mayor of a mostly Black city, and they didn't really like him, and they didn't vote for him for senator. Because he didn't really represent them, did he? He just happened to win, but that's not necessarily representation. And you're not going to represent people if you don't know them. So you need to know them. Let's see. So the next thing I wanted to show you guys is a power map. Don, how much time do I have?
Okay, you have another 6 or 7 minutes
Of talking, or does that include the Q&A?
of talking. I was going to give you the 2-minute warning at 5:55, which is
Okay.
5 minutes from now. So you
Okay.
have 5 till 5:57. Yep.
Okay, all right, because this
7
might take
minutes.
more than that.
You
Okay.
need more than 7? Okay, whatever.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah,
Go
I'll see,
for it.
because this is a section here. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to show everybody here is a power map. I don't know if has anybody heard of a power map? If you have, just like write it in the chat. Oh, wow, somebody wrote a lot. Has anybody ever heard of a power map? Yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. Okay. So the power map is actually a great way to take advantage of who you do and don't know that might be able to help you. They might help you with fundraising. Maybe they have special skills. Like maybe that nephew of yours that really knows how to do TikToks. He can be your TikTok dude. They can be your advisors. You could be part of networking, maybe the business network in your area. They could be your kitchen cabinet, your closest advisors during your campaign, and if you become if you actually get the office, right? So with the power map, with the power map, essentially what you're doing is you're trying to find out who do you know, who do they know, and who do they know, but who do they know? So you're going to start really basic. You're going to start with you. So I found this example online. And so you have a guy named Senator Jones. I don't know if it's Indiana, but probably not. Okay. Anyway, but you see that he has his minister, which is Raymond Katz. He has a party official, is Sue Betcha. An attorney he knows, which is a schoolmate. Didn't think about schoolmates, right? You probably know a lot of people that became people of prominence, or people that you possibly can work with, have skills, just, ask for some monetary support. Constituents, neighbors. This person here hired Frank, family, of course, an accountant, et cetera, et cetera. And then he kind of connected who knew everybody else. Now from here, you actually can go one more level out and see, okay, who does Raymond Katz know? Who does, Barbara Jones Esquire know? The dentist, maybe he's a coach of the baseball team, the kids' baseball team. So can you maybe try to talk to them and see if you can get those parents on board? And those kind of things. So you want to keep building out and out. Now, when you do this, all of a sudden you're going to realize you are not alone at all. And for these local offices that do not require you to have a party or ballot access, some do require money, or obviously signatures, a lot of them or something, depending on where you're going, obviously. But, you have a whole network. It's just that a lot of us, especially since the pandemic, think we're alone. It's like an epidemic here. And you think that you don't have enough people to support you. Well, you do. You do have people to support you. You have a whole network. You are an amazing person that has made connections over and over and over again. So what I wanted to do was a little exercise. I want everybody where you are to get a piece of paper and a writing implement. I will wait, like a teacher that I am. I've been a teacher for 25 years. Sorry, I have to. So I don't see everybody getting pencils and paper. I can watch some of you guys. All right. Okay. So pencils and paper. Okay. And this is good. Even if you're not going to be running for office, sometimes it's amazing to see who you actually know. And 6 steps out, you probably know Kevin Bacon. So who knows? Who knows? I think I'm like 4 steps away from Kevin Bacon, I think, by some weird oh yeah, I talked to Susan Sarandon, that's why. So anyway, so what you're gonna do first, you're gonna start with the big circle in the middle, and that's you. That's special you. And then what you're gonna do is, these are different examples. Obviously, you might have like 10 people from church or synagogue, or maybe your family's really large. Or maybe you have that one aunt that, that you can ask her to help you financially. Or maybe she can offer, I don't know, transportation or something. Think about business associates, schoolmates, friends. So I want you to sit down for a second and just kind of go around and, come up with at least 6 to 10 people that you could reach out to if you wanted to run for office, or if you needed anything, actually, but that you would want to run for office. I'll give you a couple, give you about a minute to do that. Y'all go right fast. Sorry. We're out of time. So in the chat, while people are writing, I want you to go ahead and write down like how many people you were able to name just in that short bit of time. And if you discovered anything interesting when you started to do that. And if you're really, really like somebody who wants to really go, I want you to take it and do the next level and see who your friends might know outside another level if you get really ambitious. Yeah. And remember, friends count, family counts, the dog does not count. Although he could be cute and be really great for photo ops, he's not helpful. I know mine wouldn't be. So, oh wow, 15. Good job, John. It's not a contest, but John is 15. Oh wow, 3. LCC Facebook page. Oh, okay. Yes, okay. Oh, thank you, Linda. Linda just posted the LCC Facebook page link. If you get a chance right now to just go ahead and like it on your phone, then you can keep up with whatever we're going to do next. Okay, so Don's got 3. Don, I'm pretty sure you have more than 3, but I know you're doing stuff like counting to make sure I don't go over. Anyway, so that seems to be a very basic kind of thing to do. But if you do that for yourself or for whoever wants to run, or even if you're in a situation where you're like, hey, I want to start an organization for ABC, just do a power map. And before you know it, you're going to realize you have an entire community behind you that can support you. All right. So the final thing is that I want you to remember, 5 to 10, Jonathan. I'm sure you have like 100. You're a professor. Count every student. Anyway, so time is on your side and you want to start today. So the good thing is, okay, so we don't have, I'm assuming nobody here is a millionaire. I'm pretty sure nobody's a billionaire because you wouldn't waste your time on us. Most of us probably don't have money, or maybe we're, thinking that we're not the kind of people that people would want to run. The good thing is you have time on your side. You can't really quickly make $10 million to run a campaign, but you can increase the time that you have. So if you want to run, like right now, like if it's a very small office, you can probably run a campaign 6 to 8 months convincingly if you already have a community built up. If you already have, like, so for example, people that are like a principal of a school or a pastor or a coach, or a community leader, or somebody that maybe had a smaller local job, local elected office and wants to go bigger, those people probably already have a built-in community. And so they can kind of start a little bit ahead. If you're starting from scratch, you'll probably need more time. But the good thing is you can say, okay, let's say you want to run in 2027, you have more than plenty of time. Start now, because, you can make up for some of that. It's work, but you can do that. And there's definitely time for people who want to run in 2028. So anybody that's sitting here, if you know someone or you yourself want to do it, or your organization is looking for people, just realize the biggest thing that you can do is start now and not wait. Anyway, so I think that was 2 minutes. So I am going to stop talking and there we go, Q&A. And I also put some information. This is the Labor Community Conference Network Facebook page link right there. If you want to get a hold of me, it seems like email is the only way I check these days. And if you want to see my music stuff, mostly it's up here. My political stuff's not really up there. But anyway, but yeah, so if you want to do that, you can write that down. So I guess this is Q&A time.
Okay,
if there's Q&A.
So folks can go to the react option at the bottom and raise their hand, or you can put something in the chat, or just speak out. Who would like to speak now? In fact, I'm having trouble seeing the screen here. Let me see, because of maybe someone could just speak up right now. Ah, there we go.
I stopped the screen share. Sorry about that.
Yeah, someone with a question or a comment? Oh, there we go. Kaliga. She's a friend of mine.
Hi, John. How are you?
Pretty good. Good to see you tonight.
Are we doing a meeting after this, by the way?
Yeah, we have a 7 o'clock meeting, Kaliga, but you
Okay.
know, I think we'll be able to get it in there.
I fully agree. I've been an activist for I just entered my 7th decade, so I'm 70. And I've been before I was in double digits. I was working for candidates, I was volunteering, I was working for causes. But what I'm saying is my time, it is up to younger people. I'd rather be, wrong word, kingmaker, but I would rather be behind the scenes, pushing people to be transparent, to stay true to what they promised their constituents, to listen, and to realize that they're working for the people that elect them, or they're working for the people that they take a paycheck for. So if they're working in government and they're not even electeds, but either way, officials, electeds. And I don't know what the word really is, but we also have a responsibility to do just what you were saying, which is to help younger people to realize that they can run for office, that we're behind them, that they should run for office. And I think we should have more workshops on that, kind of, and reach out to different organizations. People should really start getting civically involved because we don't teach civics anymore, but people should start getting, sorry, I have a dog that's bothering me. People should start getting involved in even elementary school, but definitely by middle school and high school. So I don't know if there's a way to reach people. Certainly by the time they're in college, they should be, organizations should be reaching out, but definitely high school. And I don't really know how to do that, but I think that's the way to get people to realize that votes matter and that running for office is really important. I don't know if people have ideas on that, how to reach them people.
Yeah, go for it, Sabrina.
So I have noticed that Gen Z, I have a 16-year-old that just turned 16 on Friday.
I have a 16-year-old too, as old as I am. My youngest is 16.
Mine turned 16 on Halloween. And I have noticed that Gen Z is on fire. They are definitely politically motivated. The girls and women of Gen Z are the farthest left of any demographic ever in the United States. The men and the boys in Gen Z, about half of them are a little further to the left, and then half have unfortunately gone to the right. So to say that there is enthusiasm there, they are getting involved. I know locally here, the DSA is more college students, but the college students are also getting involved. I do agree that we should try to reach out to young people more about running for office. I also think that when we talk about young people, it could also include people that are young parents or in their mid-30s. But I also think that it also can include maybe people that normally wouldn't run, like that abuela that, feeds everybody in the corner, or maybe the guy who, has done the post office work for 20 years. I don't think we need to go by age. I think we need to go by who they are. And I do think Gen Z is on fire. They're already on fire. I think that there's a disconnect sometimes. And not saying this group specifically, but I have seen in general, people, I guess it's just generational where you look down on younger people. But I'm actually really proud of Gen Z. They survived the pandemic. They think the world is going to fall apart. My daughter has diabetes, so she said worry about that on top of things. So I think that we should definitely harness any of those younger people. But we have to be where they are. So it might be hard because our spaces might not be the same spaces that they're in, and it'd be really weird to kind of force yourself into some of those spaces. But I think dialogue is good, and that's a good way to start. I think the colleges have a lot of opportunities. Like I said, for us locally, our DSA is really, really active. And there's a lot of colleges that have different groups that are active. And so I think that it's less of an issue of them wanting to run and more an issue of trying to harness that fire that they have and then like help guide them to how they can run. Because I think that even for people that are older or, you know, have been doing this for 50 years, running even locally seems like it's impossible and overwhelming. And a lot of people just don't have time for it. And which is a shame because then some like the worst people end up running like almost all the time. Not locally as much, but I mean, I don't even have to elaborate, you know what I mean?
Okay, before I go to the next question, I want to encourage anyone who's not on the Labor and Community Conference listserv, the email list, to please put your email in the chat. Thank you. And now we'll move on to Connie. Go ahead, Connie.
Hi there. One of the things that caught my attention about what Sabrina was saying was her comments about bringing together, about people who are interested in running for these local offices or running for office, being connected to their community. It's sort of hard for me to sort of grab hold of some of the concepts. Well, not really grab hold of the concepts, but grab hold of dealing with what you guys are talking about, ballot access, without talking about people who are running for office having a purpose other than just winning the office. Because one of the things that we advocate in this organization that I'm a member of, which is LSIP, is we advocate organizing an actual labor community coalition that advocates a clean break with the Democratic Party and advocates for a mass-based working class labor party. So when one of the things, something Jonathan said caught my attention also, when he said we have to be serious. It's sort of hard to make people think that we're serious if, one, you're not connected to your community. You're not, you have like 50 or 100 people who support you. And, you know, so I think that needs to also be included in any discussion about ballot access. I mean, ballot access for what purpose other than just to run for office and be elected? I think that we need to make sure that anybody that we support is based in a working class ideology, if you will, and who is interested in representing the interests of the working class in the office or the position for which they're running. And to me, the only way that we can really do that is to advocate for some kind of a base, that they have a base. To me, that base would be the Labor Community Coalition and or the building block, which would be the building block for a mass-based working class party. Now, we also talk about, in LSIP, we talk about this mass-based working class party being based in not only the working class, but also rooted in the unions, the youth, the communities of the oppressed, and also with an objective of building a principled coalition, if you will, with all, or unity with all national liberation movements of Black people and other oppressed nationalities. So these are the things I think that we need to make sure that any candidate that we are talking to or interested in supporting, these are the things that we need to make sure that that candidate also represents or is interested in. And as opposed to just supporting or advocating for an independent candidate, you know, to get ballot access or to win an office.
Thank you, Connie. I actually wish that you had a panel to talk right after me. I feel like you hit on a lot of things that, yeah, I know that when I was talking, I just kind of named some of the different, teachers and such like that, but I didn't really go into detail about the working class. But I'm glad Connie just did, because it's true that, when I was speaking, I debated whether or not I should spend like the first introduction going through like all the different ways that people have to deal with discrimination, racism, homophobia, misogyny, and all that. But then I felt like we already know this. And so let's do the next step, which is overcoming it. I do agree with Connie that it needs to be working class. It needs to be labor oriented. And I do think that in general, I don't think any political movement right now has been Black or brown led in a serious way, like the larger ones that have been in ballot access and stuff. I feel a lot of times brown and Black leadership isn't always listened to. And I say that as a Latina. I know I'm really pale, but I'm a Latina. And I have been in many, many, many situations with overt discrimination, supposedly with allies. And so I'm glad Connie talked on that because that is a very big, big conversation, and it might be worth doing a future webinar on it to kind of get those hard questions done. So thanks, Connie. I know that was the last question, so I'm guessing I'm bouncing.
That's wrong.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you all. Hopefully you'll be able to stick on a little bit after 6:30 because we're just running a few minutes late, y'all. But 6:30 Eastern time, that is. So our next speaker, Howie Hawkins, will address why and how to promote alternatives to our current electoral structure rather than accepting one that is rigged to suppress or limit third-party success. Howie Hawkins is a U.S. American trade unionist and environmental activist, co-founder of the Green Party of the United States. Hawkins was the party's presidential candidate in the 2020 presidential election. His ideological platform includes enacting an eco-socialist version of the Green New Deal, which he first proposed in 2010, and building a viable, independent working class political and social movement in opposition to the country's two major political parties and capitalism. Howie, welcome tonight. Thank you.
You're on mute, Howie.
Said thank you, Don. And there are a whole lot of pro-democracy reforms that we need to support. Public campaign financing, restoring the Voting Rights Act, a constitutional right to vote amendment, which would underscore those voting rights, nonpartisan election administration. I mean, most countries have independent commissions. We got the two major parties running our elections. It's what they call in economics collusion or, monopolization. It's a duopoly. Abolition of the Senate. It's anti-democratic. Small states get as much representation as big states. Abolition of the Electoral College and presidential elections by a majority popular vote using ranked choice voting. But I'm going to talk about what I think are the two most immediate reforms we should prioritize, because they're the ones I think can immediately open up the political space for the left party. And those two reforms are fair ballot access and proportional representation. I think these two are key to transforming our political system from what is an exclusive two-party duopoly into an inclusive multi-party democracy. And that will create political space for the left. Okay, so let's start with fair ballot access. As when I came onto the call, you were talking about how complicated it is state by state. I would refer people to Ballot Access News as a resource where you can follow this. Every state is different. And I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about something that I campaigned on, Ralph Nader campaigned on. It's something that has been brought up before, and that is we need federal standards of ballot access and party access to the ballot for federal elections. That's a reform that could be instituted. It'd be a single law, it'd be state, across all the states. And we've only really had one good proposal for that in our lifetimes. And that was from Representative John Conyers in 1989. He introduced what he called the Fair Election Act. And when I'm done here, I'll paste a link into the chat to that. And in the Fair Elections Act, the maximum petition signature requirement for any federal race would have been 1,000 signatures, or if it was more than that, or if and the other it was or 1/10 of 1% of the votes for that office in the previous election, whichever is greater. So that is, if you do the math in your own state, it's in almost every case going to be much less than the ballot requirements now. In my state of New York, we need 45,000 signatures collected in 42 days since Andrew Cuomo passed this Election Reform Act in 2020. And by comparison, under the Fair Election Act, we would have had 2 years to collect those 1,000 signatures. So it's a world of difference. And then once you get your candidate on the ballot, to keep a ballot line for the party that candidate represents, all you would need is 20,000 votes statewide for any office. Different states just say it's only governor or only secretary of state. This would be any statewide office. That would be 20,000 votes or 1% of the votes cast in the preceding federal election for president or senator. So it's much less. I mean, I've been asked to run statewide in New York 5 times, and I got many more times than 20,000 votes and 1%. So I got as high as 184,000. So that just shows the difference. If these were the ballot access standards in all states today, we would have a left party on every state ballot. It would not be that hard to meet. And let's apply this to the House of Representatives races, because we're going to have success at that level much before we have success at the presidential level. And I would argue that's what we should be aiming for. We get a left caucus in the House of Representatives, we'll start having leverage on national policy. Presidential campaigns can do other things, but really don't have much leverage, for a third party. I can tell you from my experience in 2020. So the current petitioning requirements in the U.S. are much higher than they are in other countries. In New York, it's 3,500 in a congressional district. And that's, about median. It's not so bad for our House races as compared to our statewide races. But in states like Illinois, it's over 15,000 signatures. Georgia, over 20,000. Alabama, over 30,000. Indiana, over 40,000. If you look in those states, that's why there are rarely, if ever, third-party candidates. And then let's compare that to the petitioning requirements to run as an independent in other countries. In most countries, once your party is recognized, you don't have a primary. Your party has a convention and nominates its slate of candidates. They actually have parties with members, unlike most American parties. But to run as an independent in other countries, they do provide a means for that. When you don't have ballot access through your party, here are the requirements. Compared to the numbers I gave you for the House of Commons, it's 10 signatures. For the New Zealand Parliament, it's 2 signatures. For India's Lok Sabha, which is their lower house of parliament, it's 10 signatures. In Australia, it's 100 signatures. In Canada, it's 100. Except in the rural ridings, which is what they call their districts, it's 50, because people are so spaced out. Germany's Bundestag, when I looked into the research, had the highest. It was 200. But compare 200 to thousands or tens of thousands in this country. I mean, so the first hurdle for us even competing in elections and having a voice is to get on the damn ballot. So actually, the worst I've found when I've done the research outside the United States is Putin's Russia. So they're to run as an independent from a federal subject, which is what they call their oblasts and their big municipalities and their autonomous regions, they're all federal subjects. They're basically like states. In Russia, it takes 45,000 signatures in 45 days. No, I'm sorry, 15,000 signatures in 45 days. And the old New York standard was 15,000 signatures in 42 days. Now it's 45,000 in 42 days. So the Russians had 3 more days. So when I've lobbied Democrats in the state legislature saying we got to get back to a reasonable, fair ballot standard, and I'd say we'd be happy to get back to Putin's standard. And they sort of nervously chuckle and say, yeah, Howie, you're right. But then they never do anything about it because they don't want the competition. So now in New York, since Cuomo got this restrictive election law passed, 2022 is the first year in New York since state-sanctioned secret ballots were adopted in 1891 that only the Democratic and Republican candidates were on the ballot. And then in 2024, it was the only time since 1891, except 1946, when only the Democratic and Republican candidates for president were on the ballot. So basically in statewide elections, they set it up so the Greens, which has been the strongest independent party in New York, the Libertarians finally got ballot access. We have fusion, so we have a lot of ballots, lines on the ballot, but the fusion parties just cross-endorse the Democratic or Republican candidates. So they're kind of like satellite auxiliary parties to the 2 major parties, but true independent party. It was the Green Party. And, what I hear, from people on the QT is that Cuomo had it, the law written that way to keep us off the ballot. Also, the state chair of the Democratic Party, what's his name? I forgot his name because I want to forget the guy, but same thing. That was their motivation. So I was saying, yeah, we got the most restrictive ballot access requirements among the world's democracies. But we have this precedent of the Conyers bill, and I think it's a bill or a concept that we should be raising all the time in federal elections, whether we have candidates or not. What happened to that bill in 1989 is it was referred to a couple of committees and buried without any hearings. It did have 37 co-sponsors. Most of them were from the Congressional Black Caucus, which was much more progressive those days than today. And some other progressives, including a younger Nancy Pelosi, who was in her 2nd term back in 1989. But the Democrats are not going to lead on this issue. They haven't done anything in 35 years since Conyers bill was introduced in 1989. So it's up to us on the left to make this an issue. And, fair ballot access, I think, in my experience, campaigning on this, most people agree with you, even if they don't agree with you on anything else. They say, yeah, fair elections, that's what we should have. And if you can't even get on the ballot, most people don't understand how hard it is. They think you just run and you're on the ballot. And they don't know. And when you explain it to them, even if they're very conservative people, they're like, wow, that's terrible. We need to change that. So that's one reform. And then the other, which is crucial as well, is proportional representation. Duverger's law was mentioned as I came on the call, and he's a French theorist who, the law is basically when you have a single member district winner take all election system, you get 2 parties, 2 major parties. But I agree with Jonathan that it's more a tendency than a law, because there are countries with that kind of system, like the UK and Canada, which have more than 2 major parties. But it is a big impediment, and the political culture in the United States is very much oriented to it, probably more than any other country. So it is a problem. So proportional representation is where each party or political viewpoint is represented in legislative bodies in proportion to their share of the vote that they receive in an election. And there are 2 basic ways to do this, and there's some hybrid systems, but one is the party list system. You vote for your party, and then the party's got a slate of candidates, and they get elected in proportion to the vote you receive. And the other is ranked choice voting, where you run a ranked choice vote in a multi-member district. And I would argue that given our political culture, the fact that we don't have membership parties or a culture of organized parties, people are oriented to the candidates. They do use parties as a shorthand when they don't know the candidates, but I think our culture, we'll get further pushing a ranked choice voting version of proportional representation. So one of the arguments for proportional representation, it's not only benefiting us on the left, everybody who doesn't get the plurality or majority in a single seat election is excluded. So if it's a 60-40 district, a landslide district, say for Republicans over Democrats, and 40% are Democrats, they don't get any representation. You know, that, whereas in a proportional system, if the multi-member district was 40% Democrats, they get 40% of the seats. So it's fundamentally anti-democratic. And the other thing about, you know, when we have single member districts, most of our districts are one-party states. In 90% of the US House seats and 95% of state legislative seats, the districts are non-competitive if you define it as 5% or greater vote margin between the candidates. Now, we're right now in the middle of a war over redistricting, where each side is trying to gerrymander more seats for themselves. I mean, this is a great time to bring up proportional representation because it pretty much eliminates gerrymandering. When you have multi-member districts and everybody gets their proportional share, how you draw the district lines doesn't matter that much. And that's what we should be injecting into this election. I know some people on the left and the Green and the Peace and Freedom parties have been taking that position with respect to the referendum they're about to have in California. So it's a good time to raise it. You know, over 100 countries around the world have proportional representation, and the US is one of the few holdouts. Another thing about proportional representation is it gives political and ethnic minorities their fair share of representation. And so what this Fair Representation Act would do is require proportional representation through ranked choice voting in multi-member districts. So for House districts, they'd be 3 to 7 where that is possible. In a state like Vermont with one member of the House, it'd just be a straight ranked choice vote. But in other states, you'd have several districts within the state with 3 to 7 members elected from that district. And so, you know, the thing about it is the bill only has, and maybe I didn't mention it, the Fair Representation Act. It's a bill before Congress that would do this. And I happened to be on a radio program earlier this year with Jamie Raskin, who's one of the co-sponsors. And I asked him, you know, where the hell is the rest of the Progressive Caucus on this bill? And he said, oh, I just wrote a Dear Colleagues letter to get more co-sponsors to the bill, which we're about to reintroduce in this current session of Congress. Well, they still have only 7 co-sponsors. So, I mean, this is an issue you can take to your members of Congress, particularly those that claim to be progressives, and make an issue out of it. I tried to shame the Progressive Caucus on this a few years ago. I wrote an article in Ralph Nader's Capitol Hill Citizen, which is hand-delivered to all the congressional offices. So I don't know if they read it. Their staff may have read it. I hope they got the message. It was titled Missing in Action, or MIA, on Ranked Choice Voting and Proportional Representation. AOC and the Progressive Caucus punt on electoral reform. So I'll put the link to that article in the chat. So I'll finish up by saying, look, ranked choice voting is a reform that we are winning big time. In 2000, we still had 2 jurisdictions using it. And those were legacies of the progressive era, when a lot of cities went to proportional ranked choice voting. By 2020, we had 24 jurisdictions and 2 states, Maine and Alaska. Today, we have over 50 jurisdictions. And so we're gaining momentum and it's accelerating. And there's a real movement out there for that. But as people on the left, we need to be in the middle of this thing, because a lot of people in that movement, they don't want to push for proportional ranked choice voting. They say, oh, that's too much change. Let's get single member proportional ranked choice voting first, and then later we can go for proportional ranked choice voting. But as activists, you know, if you go to a big campaign and win a reform, and then you come back and say, well, oh, really, we wanted this other thing, it's even better, they're going to say, go home. You know, you already bothered us enough. We're just not going to get anywhere. We should fight for what we want from the beginning. And I think one of the things that really demonstrate how important this difference is elections in Australia. Their House of Representatives is elected by single seat ranked choice voting, and their Senate is elected by proportional ranked choice voting in multi-seat districts. And in recent elections, the Green Party in Australia, over the last decade, has been receiving 10 to 12% of the vote, and actually more recently, closer to 12. And in the House, where it's single seat ranked choice voting, they've mostly had 1 out of 150 seats. For one election cycle, they got up to 4, but in the last election, for reasons I won't go into, they got just as high a vote, but they didn't get as many seats because it's not proportional. So they're back to 1 out of 150 seats, even though they got 12% of the first preference votes nationwide. In the Senate in Australia, on the other hand, for the last decade, they've always had between 9 and 11 out of 76 senators, which is around 10 to 12% of the vote. And that's been a big difference for the Greens. I mean, because they had those senators, they were credible when they ran people in House districts, and really they think they can be competitive in about 30 of those House seats in the next cycle. But you see the difference there. Where it's proportional, the Greens get, you know, the share of vote they got. When it's just single member, even if it's ranked choice voting, the Greens may get a decent vote, 10 to 12%, but they don't get a seat or their fair share of seats. And then here in the United States, another angle to this is civil rights, access to ethnic minorities to the political system. Civil rights litigation and activism by ethnic minorities have won multi-seat proportional ranked choice voting in over the last decade in a number of cities, including for African Americans in East Point, Michigan, for Latinos in Palm Desert, California, and for Asian Americans in Albany, California. So it's been a civil rights issue, and we've been winning proportional ranked choice voting in some pretty significant cities recently, like Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine. So I'm just going to close on that point. Ranked choice voting is a reform we're winning, but as a left, we need to be pushing for the inclusive multi-party democracy we get from proportional ranked choice voting.
Thank you, Howie. We're going to go another 10 minutes Q&A, and we can stay on after that as long as you want. So go ahead, John Harris, please.
Okay, who do we have first here? I see Elizabeth has a question or comment.
Yeah. Hi, Howie. Do you remember me from GPUSA?
Yes, I do. How are you doing?
Yeah. How are you doing? Yeah. You know, they have different groups here, like open primary group, ranked choice voting. I don't understand. I mean, understand that we can't all get together. You know, there may be very conservative people, but they also want some of these things that we're advocating. And it seems to me that in order to push it forward, we have to talk to those people and get in, you know, rather than on the left, you know, we're here, but some of the people on the right also want many of these things. So it seems to me that we need to get together in order for it to happen. Otherwise, I don't see it happening.
You want me to respond to each question or wait for, okay.
Each one, go
Yeah,
ahead, Hal.
the reality is there is very big money from corporate interests behind what they call open primaries, which is a lie. They're talking about nonpartisan primaries. And their objective is to destroy political parties. And if the working class is ever going to get power, it has to be organized into a party. And they want to destroy parties and basically make voters the recipients of mass advertising. We're all siloed, getting our messages off these screens. So I think, you know, our slogan should be ranked choice voting, yes. Nonpartisan primaries, no. Because so we have an argument with these folks. I know them. We got a group in here in New York called Unite New York, and they're pushing ranked choice voting, but they tie it to what they call open primaries, which is misleading. And that was the problem with there were 4 states that had referendums like that in 2024 that linked ranked choice voting to nonpartisan primaries. So the idea is you have one jungle primary, all comers, all parties, and then the top 2, that's what they do in California and Washington, or what was proposed in these cases, the top 4, then go into general election, which is then done by ranked choice voting. And, that's a system where the people with the money can get the name recognition in these jungle primaries and pass on to the general election. So I think we should oppose their so-called open primaries reform because it's designed to make parties irrelevant. And what we need is parties. One of the things I've observed, throughout since the 60s, and there are books about this, like, Bowling Alone and the Harvard sociologist, Democracy Deficit or something like that. They document how, people used to, after work, be part of civic organizations, social clubs, trade unions, and political parties, and civic, activist organizations. And all those categories of organizations have, declined. Veterans organizations. People don't meet together and talk to each other. This is where we talk about what's going on in society and how we can solve problems. Instead, we're isolated and we're getting messages from elites, giving us their choices for solutions. So I just think it's really important that we oppose these so-called nonpartisan or so-called open primaries. We do have open primaries. Like in New York, we have closed primaries except a party has an option to open up their primary to independents. In other states, you just, when you get to the election, the polling place, you pick the ballot of which party you want. You don't have to be registered in a party. But if a party has members and they want to pick their own candidates with their own, who subscribe to their platform, this nonpartisan primary system will undermine what we're trying to do. So, yeah, we should be talking to those people, but I think we have an argument.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, Linda is next, and anyone else can raise their hand, in the react button at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead, Linda. You're on mute.
Okay, yeah. I just want to stress how important this session, this discussion is to answer the threat we face us of fascism. My feeling is that since after the mass mobilizations and radicalization in the 60s, the left didn't understand the role that elections play in politics and went on for decades demonstrating and voting lesser evil. There was a minority of people, some in the Green Party, some in other groups on the left, that understood that lesser evil was a big mistake. But there was no organized unity to fight all the things that Howie is talking about, which are the barriers to a left party growing. And I used to think that the Democrats were incompetent, but recently I have seen how skillful they are at preventing the rise of a third party. They have all stages of things, like Bernie Sanders, then Mondani, getting people to run in the Democratic Party. Now they're even accepting socialists, all to prevent the rise of a genuine, real working class party. And the problem is the left hasn't been focusing on that, doesn't understand how powerless we are unless we have a working class party. If you don't have somebody in the legislature to speak and introduce resolutions and whatever, you have no power. The other thing is that Americans believe that politics is elections. Yes, we have to demonstrate. That's part of this whole strategy of this group we're building. But it's not enough. It's not enough. We have to have candidates running and be credible. Now, when the Green Party started, it began in a period of reaction when Reagan came in and there was a retreat in the labor movement. The Democratic Party got an iron grip on the trade unions. So there was very little chance of a Labor Party coming into being, but it's different today. We've got a labor upsurge going on instead of a labor retreat. That's one thing. The other thing is the No Kings demonstrations are building community coalitions. And we want community coalitions, and we don't have the strength yet all over the country to build them. But they are being built, and we have to get into them with our message and expose this whole rotten electoral system. All the facts that Howie was talking about, most Americans don't have a clue. They don't know that you only need 100 signatures to get on in other countries. They don't know that most other countries have proportional representation. The left hasn't done an education on all these basic issues until now. And that's the reason for this formation and why we have to build it. There are a lot of groups dealing with democratic elections, but in a very limited sense. But we can bring them on board and educate them to the full problem of what we're dealing with. And we've got to have unity on the left. It's all been very splintered. And this network we're building is a first attempt to get the left to start cooperating, uniting, and building a viable campaign so we can get heard in the electoral arena. So I urge people to sign up, use our resources, and we're going to need a very good website listing all the resources like Sabrina's excellent talk, Howie's talk, have these things accessible to people who are becoming interested in running for office. And there are a lot of people, there's a shift going on here and we have to acknowledge it. So that's all I have to say. And I'm very hopeful. I think this has been a great meeting.
Okay, well, thank you, Linda. Again, anyone who is not getting emails from the Labor and Community Conference, please put your email in the chat, and we'll move on to Millie now.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you. And I do agree that we need all the stuff that's been said. I think the really important, though, that came up in the last comment was about labor, because I was part of the Labor Party in the 1990s. I was vice chair of the Golden Gate, this is the Bay Area, the Labor Party at the time. And, you know, as everyone knows, that party failed. And it failed primarily because the union leadership that was running it, which, you know, had organized it and put a lot of money behind it, you know, wasn't willing to really take on the Democratic Party. When push came to shove, they just didn't do it. And there was some internal disunity in the organization too around that. But you know, and they blamed the differences between people in the left for their failure. When their failure was they didn't challenge the Democrats. That's the reality. And if there was any dissension among the ranks, it was over that. It wasn't caused by that. You know, and I think we do have to have a strategy for winning over these new elements within organized labor, because, you know, like it or not, unions are still one of the few organizations that organize across demographic differences, because most organizations don't. They're focused on one demographic or another demographic or one region, etc. They're not, you know, they're not representing everybody. You know, and unions represent people across the spectrum of identity and location and age and all those things. And we need to have an organization which can actually do that kind of education. Unfortunately, most unions aren't doing that right now. So I think that's a huge obstacle that we have to really take on and that people who have an ability to do that are in labor and they're able to organize a lot. It's just really do need to focus on that. Hopefully get caucuses in their unions that would argue for a labor party again, or working class party. And the other thing I kind of want to say is I've heard it from almost all the speakers today is this use of the term the left. I'm starting to think that's a real problem, the use of that term, because in the media, the left means Democrats, for one thing. That's how they use it in the mainstream media. We use it in this probably group of people primarily to mean socialists, but not all socialists have broken with the Democrats, as we know. So then any group of people, there ends up with problems. Now, I think that we can piggyback on the kind of coalitions that are being built by larger Democratic Party kind of related forces. I see it in Oakland, for example. Bay Resistance is a large organization that's backed by left Democrats and left nonprofits and such, right? But they're organizing neighborhood by neighborhood right now, doing assemblies. And yeah, I think it's good we get involved in those kind of things, and be there and be a part of the dialogue. Socialists, particularly clean break socialists, are going to be a minority in that environment. But there's a lot of new people who haven't really fully formulated their politics yet. And if you can find some kind of angle to get involved with something like that, I think that makes sense, because we keep running into the chicken and egg problem. Like, we don't have the power yet to do this, and yet we don't think we can work with the people who do have the power to do it, because we would get co-opted or et cetera. But it isn't necessarily true. I mean, I think you can get in on some of these groups and try to win over the new people who've come around them. And I think that we should respect that kind of organizing in that sense. It's not necessarily controlled as rigidly as we might think. And we should take advantage of any venue where we can be heard. But again, just to get back to my main point, was that we have to get labor on board with this stuff, because money, resources represents the working class as a whole. And, without that, we don't really have, we're too scattered, I think, to be independent, and also to kind of be precise when we're talking about who we're talking about, because the left, I think, is way too general a term at this point, and it's become kind of meaningless, I think. So that's just my take, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Howie.
I didn't have my hand up, but I can always talk. You want me to comment on what's been said?
You might want to react to what you've heard the last couple people say,
Well, my perspective is there's no national organization, no union. I include the Green Party, which I'm a part of, that has the capacity and the strategic leadership to organize an independent party at this point, coordinate the organization of it. And what I advocate is that wherever we are, we put down our bucket where we are and build a local, independent, progressive, or socialist party and run independent of the two major parties. I mean, look what they've given us. The last election was a choice between fascism and genocide. I mean, the political space is wide open for a progressive party. I think majority of people, if you look at the polling, they support New Deal or Social Democratic Party kind of reforms. Those of us who are socialists would analyze that, okay, you get those reforms passed, but if the capitalists still own the major means of production and still have all that power, they're going to undermine our reforms, which we've seen happen since the New Deal Democrats got replaced by the new neoliberal Democrats when Carter came in, and accelerated under Clinton. So, that's what I advocate. We don't have to wait. And I think the Greens have shown we can win local elections, independent of the two parties. There are about 150 Greens in office. Now, I know some people, the Greens are not their taste. And for me, I helped co-found them, and I've sort of always had one foot out the door, but I always stay in because it's the most practical, realistic, and energetic thing going on. I mean, Linda talked about how we were starting when the country was moving right. It wasn't just people voting for Reagan. It was the left going into the Democratic Party with Jesse Jackson. The last remnants of 60s radicals, they were mostly the Maoist groups, hadn't already join the Democrats with Michael Harrington or Tom Hayden or even Bobby Seale when, when he ran as a People's Democrat for the mayor of Oakland. They were the last holdouts. And so we were swimming against the stream in the 80s, and we started electing local people to office. Our first guy who won was, there was a guy with one of the Chippewa tribes, the Red Band tribe, I think it was, off Lake Superior, the Lake Superior Greens. And I forget the brother's name. But he got a white guy in the county to run for county council to deal with some issues that jointly concern rural people up there as well as people on the reservation, and he won. And that was the beginning, and so we kept electing more and more. And I think, I think Linda mentioned this, or maybe it was when we were talking earlier, Linda, the opportunities are greater now. There's more independent labor upsurge, unlike what we had in the 80s when everything was in retreat. I think it's not that big a labor upsurge, but there's something to work with. And then the polling, I said there's a social democratic majority. That has been consistent, going back to the New Deal. And so I could go on and on. I wrote 2 long articles about this. One was called A Political Paradox, How a Progressive Leaning Public Elected a Right-Wing President. And I looked at the polling data, and it showed that people are progressive on economic class issues for sure, but mostly on the social issues too. And then I wrote another article called Independent Political Action Under Trump, where I advocated, well, it's 14,400 words. It's long. It says why the Democrats are a lost cause. It argues for the kind of party we need to build, a campaigning party that's in the movements and is a membership party with dues paying and things like that. And then as I was finishing the article, Mamdani won the primary in New York City. So of course the DSA people are saying, well, what about Mamdani? So I had to spend another couple thousand words doing a balance sheet on Mamdani. I think he ran a good campaign, but he's going to be hamstrung by his inside the Democratic Party. And one of the conclusions I draw is we should run for legislative seats and not so much for executive seats we can win, because we can get into office but not into power. Because Mamdani, if he wins, is going to have a progressive caucus that's about 1/3 of the city council, and it's not that progressive, most of them. And of course, the big banking interests and Trump, he's got a lot of problems if he gets elected. So anyway, I'll put links to those 2 articles in the chat if you want to take the time to read them.
Okay, well, thank you, Howie. Actually, I have a question of my own. I was part of the labor movement and different unions actually for decades, and I found with the campaigns that I was involved organizing that they were the unions I belonged to were the slowest to participate and react, quite frankly. So my prediction is that when we run local candidates, which I'm in favor of, that a lot of it's going to come from, I think the first victories are going to come from the unorganized working class, really people that want to change things instead of being hamstrung by the structures and the bureaucracy of the labor movement, quite frankly. And, we might get some rank and file workers in a union to run, but I don't think the first victories are going to come from that milieu, quite frankly. And maybe Howie could respond to that. Over.
I think you're right. The organized, the officers and their staff, they're very conservative. In this climate, and it's kind of ingrained now after decades, they are defending the members they have and the benefits they have, and they're more like an insurance company. As a union member, you feel you pay your premiums, your dues, and you get your benefits. And then when it comes to grievances, you've got to fight to get the business agents or whoever it is in your union, the stewards as well, to fight for your grievances. In the Teamsters, I was involved in a lot of grievances. I won every one, and I got a lot of back pay out of it. I didn't put in frivolous, grievances, but it's a real fight, and it's kind of exhausting. And then when it comes to politics, my union leadership didn't know how to use Robert's rules, but they did know how to say you're out of order. So that was my experience with my local in the Teamsters, which is the labor people in the leadership in central New York, where I am around Syracuse, are probably the most conservative labor council in the state. But when I run for office, the Teamsters support me, the rank and file. I can't get official endorsement, but I mean, even conservative people, you know, Howie may be a commie, but he's our commie, you know, or a tree hugger, he's our tree hugger. And, you know, that goes back to, I think, the point Sabrina made about canvassing. You know, if you make personal contact with voters in local elections, man, that means so much. Just the fact that you listen to them. If you don't go out and preach, or as Mom Donnie says, don't listen, don't lecture, some people will pour their hearts out to you. And then, you know, when you finish the conversation, you try to let them know where you're coming from and glad to have the opportunity. And they say, I don't agree with any of that. But you know what? You seem like an honest person. Just the fact that you talk to them, that personal connection means a lot. Anyway, I think you're right. The rank and file workers are, you know, ready to move. And they're going to they'll move before the structures of the unions do. And actually, I think a left party or whatever you want to call it, the Greens should do this. I've had conversations with the Greens about a labor caucus, but unfortunately, the people that bring it up want endorsements from unions. They don't want to go into the unions and do political organizing, which is, I think, what we need to do. The unions will come along when within the unions, there's a movement for independent political action. And that's been taboo. I mean, I've been very active in Teamsters for a Democratic Union. I mean, I'm wearing one of their t-shirts, even though I resigned because they're with O'Brien now. Labor notes, to have political discussions about independent political action is taboo. They say, oh, it's divisive. Well, too bad. I mean, it's an important issue. We need to talk it through. So I think it's the left party that will bring the formal unions along rather than us. If we're waiting for the unions to make a move, which is what the old Labor Party was doing, we're going to wait. We'll be gone. We're going to wait our whole lives. It's just not going to happen.
All right, thank you, Howie. Further questions or comments? Go ahead. I see Linda. Okay. I generally try to call on somebody that hasn't spoken yet, but all I see is Linda. So go for it, Linda.
Okay, I believe our next meeting is November 11th. Is that correct? Somebody?
Don?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, well, I just want to encourage everybody to show up because this is very inspiring. And I think if we take all these resources that we have here and put it on a website so people can, and then spread that around knowledge, this is where you go. For instance, you could have the link to the ballot access organization. You can have Nader's Capitol Hill Citizen link on that website. So people can just go there. If they're thinking of running for office, have Sabrina's talk on there. And we have to start having resources available for people to turn to. And there are a lot of organizations, even right here, that could contribute to that. So I just want to encourage us to get our act together and do it. And the other thing I just want to say is the left is terrible on fundraising. I mean, Jill changed a lot of that when she ran her presidential campaigns and started raising big money. But we all have to learn those skills. How to raise money using the internet. It's possible today where it wasn't in the past. We've got to have money for everything we do, and the left doesn't take it seriously, in my opinion. And here I'm using the left again. Somebody should come up with an alternative name for us. But that's I just want to stress, come to the meeting. Let's get our act together and get going. Thank you, everybody. It's wonderful.
We have one last comment from Elizabeth.
Yeah,
And then we're going to have to close up.
Yeah, social media. Are we on social media? Maybe we should have a podcast. You know, we should be involved in social media.
We're on Facebook.
We're on Facebook, but I
I
think
won't do Facebook. How about Substack? That's a good place to promote yourself because it's, I don't know. I won't do
We'll put
Facebook.
that on the agenda for next meeting, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right, you all, I appreciate you coming tonight. This is wonderful. We have recorded this and we're gonna be sending the link out. And yes, thank you all. Have a good evening.
thank you. Bye.
Night. Thanks for coming.
Bye.